Hello everyone. Today we will be discussing about the topic anemia. This is a very huge chapter and a very important part of hematology. And to make it simplify, I will be dealing this chapter into a subsequent lecture classes. For today, I have planned my class in following subheadings, that is definition of anemia, classification of anemia, characteristics of hemolytic anemia, classification of hemolytic anemia, pathogenesis with the difference between intravascular and extravascular hemolytic anemia. So starting with our first topic, that is definition of anemia. Now anemia can be defined as decrease in RBC count, hemoglobin and or hematocrit below the level which is expected for the healthy person of same age, sex and in same environment, resulting in lower ability for the blood to carry oxygen to the tissue. This definition means that for anemia, to define as anemia, there should be decrease in RBC count, hemoglobin count or hematocrit, and this decrease should be uniform for that age group, for that sex and for the same environment. By the environment, I mean to say that if the person is living in a higher altitude area, their normal range of hemoglobin will different from those who are living in non-hill areas. So, and we know that in our body, blood carries oxygen, that is hemoglobin is carrying oxygen to various tissue. So whenever there is anemia, means whenever there is decrease in hemoglobin, as a result what will happen, there will be decreased supply of oxygen to the tissue and finally there will be manifestation of hypoxia. Now according to the WHO, anemia is defined as hemoglobin levels less than 12 gram per deciliter in women and less than 13 gram per deciliter in men. In pregnancy, anemia is defined when hemoglobin will be less than 11 gram% and a hematocrit value of less than 0.33. This definition is as per WHO. WHO has defined the anemia on the basis of the level of hemoglobin. But when we have to define the anemia, we should always remember that this will be defined only when there will be decrease in RBC, hemoglobin and hematocrit below the level which is expected for healthy person of same age, sex and in same environment, with the additional value, that is hemoglobin will be less than 12 gram per deciliter in case of women and less than 13 gram per deciliter in case of men. In case of pregnancy, the hemoglobin level should be less than 11 gram% and the hematocrit level should be less than 0.33. Now coming to the pathophysiology of anemia, what is happening that there is decrease in RBC, hemoglobin and hematocrit level and oxygen is dissolved in the hemoglobin. Whenever the value of hemoglobin will fall, there will be decreased oxygen carrying capacity. As a result, there will be hypoxia and all the signs and symptoms will be manifested. So what are the common signs of anemia? Usually the patient will suffer from palpitation. Why? Because there will be lack of oxygen supply to the heart and there will be manifestation as in the form of palpitation. There will be dizziness. Why? Because lack of oxygen to the CNS, angina, pallor of skin, nail, weakness, fatigue and lethargy. So these are all general features, signs and symptoms of anemia. Now talking about the classification of anemia. Anemia is broadly classified into two subheadings, that is etiological classification and morphological classification. This etiological classification is further subdivided into few headings, that is number 1, anemia due to increased blood loss like if there is acute hemorrhagic anemia, suppose the patient is suffering from road trauma accidents. In that case, when there is a huge blood loss, the patient comes to you with anemia, and in this time they will suffer from acute hemorrhagic anemia. Next, there can be also anemia due to chronic blood loss. Suppose the patient is suffering from peptic ulcer disease, PUD. So in peptic ulcer disease, there is ulceration in the GI. So there is blood loss for a period of time. As a result, again, the patient will manifest anemia. Next, anemia due to decreased cell production. In this, it can be due to nutritional deficiencies like iron deficiency anemia and megaloblastic anemia. Apart from nutrition deficiencies, there can be anemia of chronic disease, sideroblastic anemia, if there is any malignant cells and these malignant cells are infiltrating your bone marrow, so there will be decreased RBC production and there will be anemia. So this will also come under anemia due to decreased red cell production. And finally, anemia due to increased destruction, that is known as hemolytic anemia, which is main topic of discussion for today. That in this, again, there can be subclassified due to various causes. It can be, which we will see in the coming slides. Few examples: if there is any abnormality of red cell membrane like hereditary spherocytosis, in that case the anemia will be under subclassification that is known as hemolytic anemia. Now talking about morphological classification. Morphology means how we see the RBC in a microscope. That is the size of RBC. If the RBC size is small, it will be termed as microcytic hypochromic anemia. Now what do we mean by hypochromia? We know that RBC is a biconcave and there is a central pallor. Now if this pallor is increased, that will be termed as hypochromia. So RBC is small and the central pallor is increased, hence termed as microcytic hypochromic anemia. The examples are iron deficiency anemia. It can be also due to thalassemia. It can be also due to sideroblastic anemia, and finally due to anemia of chronic disease. Talking about next is your normocytic normochromic. The size of RBC is same, means there is no alternation in the size of RBC, hence normocytic normochromic. The final it is your macrocytic normochromic, where the size of RBC is increased. Example is your megaloblastic anemia due to deficiency of vitamin B12 and folic acid. So morphologically, microcytic hypochromic, normocytic normochromic and macrocytic normochromic. This was a general classification of anemia based on etiology and morphology. So again, seeing microcytic hypochromic, iron deficiency anemia, thalassemia, anemia of chronic disease, sideroblastic anemia. Coming to normocytic normochromic, anemia of chronic disease, macrocytic normochromic, megaloblastic anemia. Now coming to the main heading, that is your hemolytic anemia. Now this is a type of anemia in which there is hemolysis, means increased red cell destruction. So hemolytic anemia shared the following features. In this particular type of anemia, there will be decreased red cell lifespan. So a shortened red cell lifespan below the normal, that is less than 120 days. Whenever there is decreased red cell lifespan or there is increased hemolysis, always the body tries to compensate this by increasing the activity of erythropoiesis. So there is a term known as compensatory increase in erythropoiesis. By this mechanism, the bone marrow tries to produce more of RBC to compensate the anemia. And also, since in anemia, what will happen? There will be decreased hemoglobin, and as a result, there will be hypoxia. This hypoxia stimulates for the synthesis of erythropoietin level. So, there will be increased erythropoietin level and compensatory increase in erythropoiesis. Finally, there will be accumulation of hemoglobin degradation product, which is due to increased red cell hemolysis. What do you mean by hemoglobin degradation products? Like accumulation of bilirubin can be there, because we all know that bilirubin comes from heme. Whenever there is increased red cell destruction, there will be degradation of hemoglobin. From hemoglobin, there will be generation of heme. Now this heme will convert into bilirubin. So this will be accumulating. To summarize, three important features. There will be decreased red cell lifespan. There will be increased erythropoietin level and compensatory increase in erythropoiesis. Also, there will be accumulation of hemoglobin degradation products. Now next, the classification of hemolytic anemia. So, this can be classified on the basis of etiology, means the cause. It can be inherited or it can be acquired. Clinically, how the patients come to us, it can be an acute manifestation or can be a chronic disease. So, acute hemolytic anemia or a chronic hemolytic anemia, depending upon the site of hemolysis, either the RBC is destroyed within the vascular surface, within the blood vessels. So, the term is intravascular, or outside the vessels, basically in phagocytic systems like in spleen, liver and macrophages. So, termed as extravascular hemolysis. Next is your mechanisms, whether the cause is due to any defect within the RBC. So it is known as intracorpuscular, or if the defect is outside the RBC, that is termed as extracorpuscular. If we further simplify this classification, hemolytic anemia will be broadly classified into acquired and hereditary. In acquired, number one is due to immune mediated, due to any immunological reaction there is hemolysis. We know that whenever there is immunological reaction, there is antigen antibody reaction. As a result, there is destruction of RBC, and this is termed as immunohemolytic anemia. Due to mechanical traumas, this mechanical trauma can be due to any common causes, like if there is a prosthetic heart valve, this prosthetic heart valve is defective and this is causing trauma to the blood vessels and there will be hemolysis. Next is due to direct toxic effects due to any infections. Next, due to acquired red cell abnormalities. And finally, due to splenomegaly. Whenever spleen is enlarged, the function of spleen is a phagocytic activity. It will try to kill everything. So, in this, it tries to eat up the RBC and there is hemolysis. Hereditary can be broadly classified into two. One is if there is defect in the red cell membrane, abnormalities of red cell membrane, or if there is disorder inside the red cell, like if there is defect in enzyme, we will be seeing in the coming slides. Now, seeing about the classification of anemia in a broader term, first is acquired. In this, number one is due to immunological reactions, that is immunohemolytic anemia. One is autoimmune hemolytic anemia. This will be further classified into warm antibody autoimmune hemolytic anemia, cold antibody autoimmune hemolytic anemia. Second, due to drug induced immunohemolytic anemia. Third, due to isoimmune hemolytic anemia. Next cause is your mechanical trauma. One is microangiopathic hemolytic anemia. In this, there are few conditions like hemolytic uremic syndrome, or in DIC. What is happening in DIC? There is too much activity of coagulation system. As a result, there will be anemia. Next, due to direct toxic effects, due to any infections, basically bacterial infections, or due to malaria or any toxic agents, acquired red cell membrane abnormalities like paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria and finally splenomegaly. Now talking about hereditary type of hemolytic anemia, first, abnormalities of red cell membrane. In this, number one, which is very common and the most common, is your hereditary spherocytosis, hereditary eleptocytosis, hereditary stomatocytosis, disorder of the red cell interior. In this, first, if there is defect in any enzymes of the red cell, so red cell enzyme defects. Number one, defect in hexose monophosphate shunt, like deficiency of one enzyme, that is your glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency, that is G6PD deficiency. Defects in Embeden-Meyerhof or glycolytic pathway, example is pyruvate kinase deficiency. Now, if there is disorder of hemoglobin, either there will be synthesis of abnormal hemoglobin or there will be decreased synthesis of globin chain. Now talking about abnormal hemoglobin like sickle cell anemia, that is known as sickle syndrome, or any other hemoglobinopathies. If there is reduced globin chain synthesis like thalassemia, we know that globin chain is composed of alpha and beta. So if either of this chain is defective, there will be hemolytic anemia, which will be termed as either alpha thalassemia or beta thalassemia, depending upon which is decreased, whether it is alpha chain decreasing or beta chain decreasing. This was all about the classification of hemolytic anemia. Now, repeatedly I was talking about extravascular and intravascular. What do we mean by extravascular? Extravascular means the destruction is occurring in the phagocytic system due to increased phagocytosis. That is, those who are having increased scavenging properties like spleen, liver. So due to any abnormalities, if the red cell become less deformable or less flexible, let's talk about one particular example that is termed as sickle cell anemia. Now, I have said already that normal RBC is biconcave, but in this sickle cell anemia, the shape of RBC will be sickled. Now, whenever these red cells are passing through the spleen, sinusoids, this biconcave nature of the RBCs can easily, this biconcave nature of RBC are very flexible and can pass easily through the spleen. But these sickle cells are not that flexible. As a result, they are trapped in the spleen. So, there will be red cell sequestration and there will be phagocytosis. Phagocytosis means there will be increased destruction of this RBC. As a result, there will be extravascular destruction of red cells. Now in this, whenever there is extravascular destruction of red cells, there will be liberation of what? That is your heme protein. Now, whenever there is liberation of this heme, they will convert into biliverdin. This biliverdin will convert into bilirubin. Now, initially, the bilirubin is in your unconjugated form. So, here what will happen? There will be increased level of unconjugated bilirubin, and whenever there is increased red cell lysis or destruction, there will be release of enzyme. So there will be increased serum lactate dehydrogenase. So these are the properties of extravascular hemolysis. Very important here is that what is happening? There will be too much destruction of RBC due to increased phagocytic activity, and this increased phagocytic activity is because in this condition the red cells are becoming less flexible. Whenever the red cells are less flexible, they tend to trap in the spleen and there will be destruction of this red cells. Now talking about intravascular hemolysis, due to any cause, whenever there is destruction of RBC inside the vessels, there will be release of hemoglobin. Now this hemoglobin will undergo three fates. Number one, this free hemoglobin will try to combine with compound known as heptoglobin. There will be formation of hemoglobin heptoglobin complex, which is usually cleared by hepatocytes. So what is happening? Hemoglobin is making a pair with heptoglobin. Now important thing is that heptoglobin synthesis, the synthesizing capacity of heptoglobin is limited, but the pathology is in your RBCs. There is increased production of RBC which is going destruction. As a result, there will be increased hemoglobin. Now this increased hemoglobin will outnumber the presence of heptoglobin. So a stage will come when there will be no heptoglobin and all the heptoglobin are consumed by this hemoglobin. So what is happening? There will be decrease or absence of heptoglobin. So this is an important marker of hemolysis. Why it is happening? Once again, whenever there is hemolysis, the hemoglobin tries to pair up with heptoglobin, but since there is too much production of hemoglobin which is outnumbering the number of heptoglobin, as a result there will be decrease or absence of heptoglobin, which is the important marker of hemolysis. Next, this free hemoglobin, if there is presence of free hemoglobin, what will happen? They will be filtered by the glomeruli and there will be hemoglobinuria. In this process, some of this hemoglobin are reabsorbed in the proximal tubules and the iron in the hemoglobin will be converted or will be stored in the form of ferritin and hemosiderin. So there will be what? Hemosideruria. So hemoglobinuria and hemosideruria. Why hemoglobinuria? Because there is presence of free hemoglobin which is filtered by glomeruli. Now next is that free hemoglobin, this free heme can also bind to albumin. Now this will form a compound known as methalbumin. So these were the three fates which will happen whenever there will be increased release of hemoglobin. Now in this diagrammatic presentation, let's see what we are seeing. Talking about the extravascular hemolysis, there is increased RBC phagocytosis, and we saw that whenever there is increased red cell destruction, there will be production of heme. This heme will convert into biliverdin. This biliverdin will convert into bilirubin. Initially, this is unconjugated form. Now, this bilirubin will bound with albumin and will be taken up by the liver where there will be conjugation of this bilirubin. Now, this conjugated bilirubin will come into the biliary system and they will be acted upon by intestinal bacteria and they will be formed urobilinogen. Now this urobilinogen can also come into the urine. So what is important? In hemolytic anemia, we can see unconjugated form of bilirubin is increasing and urobilinogen can also increase. Now next is that the common thing between extravascular and intravascular, there is RBC lysis. As a result of increased destruction of RBC, there is liberation of free hemoglobin. This hemoglobin can combine with heptoglobin, and again they will combine with heptoglobin, and there will be production of again bilirubin, and this bilirubin will go this pathway, or this free hemoglobin will be filtered by glomeruli, and there will be hemoglobinuria. So this was about your pathogenesis of extravascular and intravascular hemolysis. Now let's see the difference between the intravascular and extravascular hemolysis. First, the site. Intravascular hemolysis, as the name say, inside the blood vessels, that means inside the circulation. Extravascular means macrophage of spleen, liver and bone marrow outside the circulation. Causes: intravascular hemolysis can be due to infections like Malaria falciparum, paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria. In case of extravascular hemolysis, the causes can be due to hemoglobinopathies like thalassemia or any hereditary hemolytic anemia. Splenomegaly is usually a manifestation of extravascular hemolysis, because why? All the RBC that are sequestered will be destroyed by basically spleen, or also can be destroyed by liver. So if they are destroyed by spleen, there will be splenomegaly. But in case of intravascular hemolysis, sometimes you can see splenomegaly. So splenomegaly can be present both in intravascular and extravascular, but it is a predominant feature of a extravascular hemolysis. Reticulocyte count. What is reticulocyte? Reticulocyte are your immature RBC. Now, in this hemolytic anemia, what is happening? There is increased red cell destruction. So, whenever there is increased red cell destruction, bone marrow try to compensate this by increasing erythropoiesis. So, there will be increased production of RBC, and this RBC will come into the peripheral blood smear. This immature RBC will come into the peripheral blood smear, and that will be termed as reticulocytes. So the reticulocyte count usually are increased in case of hemolysis. Why? Because there is increased activity of your bone marrow. So there is increased erythropoiesis, as a result of which reticulocyte is increased in both the condition. Now talking about indirect serum bilirubin level, that is your unconjugated form, that will be increased in both the cases of hemolysis. Why? Because in both the cases there is increased destruction of RBC. RBC, whenever there is increased destruction of RBC, heme is released, and this heme will again undergo the conversion from biliverdin to bilirubin. So there will be increased unconjugated bilirubin level. Plasma hemoglobin level will be markedly increased in case of intravascular hemolysis, but can be mild to moderately increased in case of extravascular hemolysis. Now, hemoglobin in the urine is usually present in case of intravascular hemolysis, because the free hemoglobin tends to filter through the glomeruli, and they will be present in the urine. Hemosideruria again is a hallmark of intravascular hemolysis. They are absent in extravascular. Methylalbumin will be present in case of intravascular hemolysis. So these three important points, that is increased hemoglobin in the urine, increased hemosiderin in the urine, and methylalbumin level will be positive in case of intravascular hemolysis, and they are usually absent in case of extravascular hemolysis. Serum heptoglobin level will be decreased in both the cases. Why? Because whenever there will be production of hemoglobin, they tend to bind with heptoglobin. As a result, the heptoglobin are used up. and the level are decreased. Serum LDH again will be increased in both the case. Why? Because RBC is destroyed. When the RBC is destroyed, the enzymes are liberated and LDH will be increased. Talking about the clinical features, very important anemia. Now this degree of anemia depends upon the severity. If the erythropoiesis is adequate, the patient will be in compensated form and they will present to you with chronic hemolytic anemia. But in some condition, that is thalassemia major, in this hemolysis, that is RBC's destruction is so extensive that bone marrow cannot compensate this destruction despite of their increased erythropoiesis. So in this case, the anemia will be severe. Next, whenever there will be anemia, there will be pallor of mucous membrane. Next point is jaundice. Jaundice, why? Already explained. Whenever there will be RBC destruction, there will be heme liberation. These heme will go conversion from biliverdin to bilirubin and jaundice. Now next, splenomegaly. Why splenomegaly? Because whenever there is too much RBC destruction, there will be increased phagocytic activity. One has to clear up all these RBC which are destroyed. So spleen usually increases and splenomegaly will be evident in case of extravascular hemolysis. Gallstone are very common, that is also termed as cholelithiasis. In this case, in the case of hemolytic anemia, these gallstones are usually blackish dark color. In cholesterol gallstone, they are usually yellowish, but in case of hemolytic anemia, they will be dark brown color. Now next, urine turns dark on standing because there will be increased urobilinogen. Already explained, heme, from heme to biliverdin, biliverdin to bilirubin, then bilirubin will convert into urobilinogen. Now this will excrete in urine. So urine tends to turn dark on standing. Leg ulcer are a specific manifestation of a particular type of hemolytic anemia termed as sickle cell anemia. Skeletal abnormalities, why? Because whenever there is increased red cell destruction, there will be increased erythropoiesis. The bone marrow tries to act more. As a result, the skeletal abnormality will be there. Next, aplastic crisis. This is sudden depletion of RBC production due to a particular infection known as parvovirus B19. In aplastic crisis, not only RBC is decreased, but there will be decrease in WBC, decrease in platelet. What is happening in aplastic crisis? Whole bone marrow shutdowns. There is decreased activity of bone marrow, and we know that bone marrow is the main thing which leads to the production of three lineage. That is, one is your RBC, one is your WBC, one is your platelet. So due to depression of bone marrow due to this infection, that is parvovirus B19, there will be decreased RBC production, which is termed as anemia, decreased WBC production, there will be neutropenia, decreased platelet, there is thrombocytopenia. So all the three lineage are decreased. This is termed as pancytopenia. Pancytopenia. Pan means entire, everything. Cyto means cell. Penia means decrease. So pancytopenia. This was a bit about hemolytic anemia. So before ending, just give it a try. All are the features of hemolytic anemia except hemoglobinuria, jaundice, increased heptoglobin, and hemosideruria. Now in the next classes, in the coming videos, I will try to cover individual type of hemolytic anemia. For today, this was end of my topic. Thank you.